just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. That was drummed into me very, very early on in my business career, and it's something that I've always tried to bear in mind with every decision I've made. And it's something that's really on my mind today. Recording this video, a video that I have to be honest, I didn't really want to record, a video that I've been putting off recording. I want Wrestling Life, as I've said many times before, to be a positive place, a place which isn't all about negativity, that isn't about being critical of a product. I want this to be a place where we celebrate all the great things in wrestling. And there are many, many great things in wrestling. But one thing that's very, very hard to feel good about right now is WWE ticket prices and everyone having the ability to watch live WWE action. I'm recording this video in the wake of comments that TKO COO, try saying that with a mouthful of marshmallows, Mark Shapiro made at the Goldman Sachs conference in San Francisco. Mark was asked directly about WWE ticket prices and whether they'd ever be on par with UFC prices. And his reply has obviously garnered a lot of attention, and not for the right reasons. I'm going to read this off my screen, so excuse me, but I want to get it right. To quote Mark Shapiro, he said, WWE is not where the UFC yet is on ticket yield. We have our work to do there. He went on to say, and this is the crucial bit, we know we have a lot of room there because Vince McMahon was primarily pricing tickets for families and wasn't totally focused on maxing the opportunity there. Now that we've seen what we can do with UFC, we're replicating that in terms of ticket yield and holding back and advanced sales when it comes to on location on the WWE side, and it's working out really well. Now I want to pick up on that key point that I think a lot of people have been talking about on social media today, which is the mention of Vince McMahon and that he primarily priced tickets for families. Now the thing about wrestling, is wrestling has always been this incredible community, this tribe, if you will. It has been like a family, and no matter how big the WWF became, no matter how mainstream it got in the late 90s, when it became a publicly traded company, when it switched to WWE, it's always felt like our company, especially for those of us which were with it through thick and thin. I've been a WWF loyalist, a WWE loyalist since the early 90s. I've bought as much merchandise, attended as many live events, bought as many toys, and put as much money into that company as I can afford. It's been my life for over 30 years. That's why my show is called Wrestling Life. I adore the company, I always have done, and I adore wrestling generally. I want all of these wrestling companies to succeed and the talents involved to make as much money as possible. Of course I do. But the thing is, it has always felt like a family. And when I think about when I attended live events in the mid-90s, it was perfectly affordable entertainment. I remember, going to my first house show in Birmingham in 1996. I think I paid about £15 for a ticket. I remember going to One Nine Only, that incredibly historic pay-per-view. I sat in the second row, right behind the Hart family. I think I paid about £30, maybe £25. I went to Capital Carnage. I went to Rebellion. I went to all these huge shows. All of it was affordable for me. And, whilst the merchandise was expensive and the whole night out was, it was a big investment, it was something that you could afford to do. Now fast forward to 2025 and I'm a father of a little boy who loves wrestling, which is unbelievably exciting. It feels so full circle to me. He absolutely adores Rey Mysterio, he loves Roman Reigns, he loves John Cena. These characters are what Bret Hart and the British Bulldog were for me when I was a little boy. Over the summer, he wanted to go to WWE Live. He wanted to go to his first WWE show. And I looked at the ticket prices. I looked at Cardiff, I looked for a Cardiff house show, and I just simply couldn't afford it. It just wasn't possible for me to afford to take my little boy to see a house show, because those ticket prices from where I was, back in the 90s, are tenfold the price of what they were now. And of course, this isn't just WWE. This is across the whole of live events. This is the world right now. You've only got to look at the incredible prices that people have paid for Oasis tickets, in particular Taylor Swift tickets, Coldplay tickets, whoever it may be. Live events have got wild price-wise in the last few years with everything that's happened to the world. So this isn't WWE in a bubble. However, WWE does need to think very carefully, in my opinion, about where they do go from here, because wrestling has always been an industry which has gone up and down and has its peaks and troughs. You can reach the incredible heights of 1998 and you can reach the dizzying lows of 2004. The reality is, for every 1987 there is a 1995, and whilst WWE is hugely hot right now, that's not to say it always will be. Now, I understand from TKO's standpoint, whilst it is so hot, you want to maximise the opportunity. You want to build your revenue streams. You want to make as much money as you possibly can. The danger of doing that is you lose sight of those fans that have been loyal to you for so long, and also that next generation. Like, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I wouldn't be running this channel. I wouldn't have spent all these years loving and spending money on wrestling had I not got into it as a little boy. If I hadn't been able to go and see it as a little boy, I wouldn't be a fan right now. It was the ability to go and see my heroes in real life that consolidated this all for me. To not be able to do that, I think, is a huge barrier to the growth of the business, and that's something that worries me. It's something that I worry about it. I'm someone who loves this industry. I want to see this industry thrive. I want to see this industry have a very, very long future. To see wrestling move towards a very elitist pricing model, when wrestling has always really been, unlike other sports, wrestling has always been a sport which has been for everyone. It's never really tailored towards one demographic. That's been the beauty of it. Anyone can enjoy wrestling. Anyone can enjoy the storytelling. Anyone should be able to afford it. Now, of course, there's different tiers to what you can afford, and not everyone can afford a front row ticket to a pay-per-view. Not everyone's going to go to a WrestleMania. But everyone, I think, should have the opportunity financially to be able to take their kids, or to go as a family, or to go with friends to see a WWE live show. I think this move that we're seeing with TKO it's a huge change in mindset in terms of actually who WWE is aimed at now, and who really matters in terms of the audience that they want in their shows. I mean, this conversation kind of goes hand in hand with the reports that WrestleMania 43 could very well be emanating from Saudi Arabia. A country where until very recently we have not seen much in the way of crowd reaction. Most of these big marquee matches that have played out in Saudi Arabia, whilst looking incredibly impressive and spectacular, haven't really yielded much in terms of big fan pops, which a huge show like WrestleMania is so reliant on. I think we all knew it was inevitable that WrestleMania would eventually air from Saudi Arabia, but the speed at which that is happening, I think, is what's catching us off guard. And I think a lot of this stuff that we're reeling from, I've had conversations with a few people recently who were old school WWF fans, who were kind of new generation fans, even before the Attitude Era, and some of those people are saying that just something feels a bit off right now with WWE, and kind of how it's positioned and how it's tailored towards us. I think I started to notice that change definitely when I attended WrestleMania 40. You could definitely feel TKO's foot handprints kind of coming in there, and it just felt, I don't know how to describe it, but it didn't feel like the same as WrestleMania usually did. When I went to Clash at the Castle in 2022, so this is obviously before TKO came on board, the exorbitant prices that I paid out for tickets just absolutely, was beyond anything I could have thought of. Like, it was absolutely insane, the cost of the prices. And, I did my very best to kind of, make that financially work for my family. But it was an awful lot of money. And I remember being at that show, spending hundreds and hundreds of pounds. I think my tickets were £260, which is equivalent of, over $300, for seats which weren't great, where I had a lighting rig in front of the view, and then to discover that people sitting right next to me had paid £40 because a section of the arena had been closed off to make it look better for TV, and they had been moved down from the back row to the seats we were in. And that was one of those moments where I just sitting there thinking, like, man, like, I've just paid through the nose for this event, and that investment doesn't really balance with the experience I'm getting. I'm probably not explaining that very well, but I'm just kind of trying to get across in my own rambly way that the last few years have just felt like something's been disconnected with the audience, and I've always felt very, very looked after by WWE as a fan until the last couple of years. And I guess it's like that old adage of, like, you love your favourite rock band until they go mainstream. And obviously WWE has always gone mainstream, but like, this is a whole different level now. There was a brilliant breakdown that the excellent James Romero did on his channel recently. I'll pop it in the notes because it's worth watching. He was looking at WrestleMania 42 ticket prices and how astronomical they've got, and if you wanted to sit in a front row, what you would have to pay and what you would get for that. Recently, Green T-shirt guy, there's been pieces written about him, that guy we see in the front row of every show, talking about kind of what he pays for his tickets to have that visibility. I have massive admiration for people that can do that. It's incredible, but I think it's just, eyes are starting to be open to just how much money is changing hands now at WWE events. And if we do get to a point where all the shows you have to spend thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pounds to be there, what fans do you ultimately get in the end? Do you get those same rowdy, ravenous fans that have been loyal and followed that product for decade after decade after decade, who are invested in the storylines, who get all the backstories, who recognise the nuances of that long form storytelling? Or do you attract people who have just discovered it on Netflix and who have that money and that disposable income? Or do you just get, as we've seen a lot of UFC and a lot of other combat sports, do you get this corporate community, where it's lots of hospitality, it's lots of people that don't necessarily want to be there but are there for the attraction and the experience rather than being invested in the talent and the storylines? And that's great for now, but what does that's not a kind of audience that you can bank on for return again and again and again, year after year after year. So this has been rambly, probably more rambly than I wanted it to be, and I apologise for that. Thank you if you stuck with me, but I think I just wanted to record something really as a discussion to kind of get sense for mood of where people are right now, because for me, I can't really get my head around it, and it's all just feeling like a bit crazy. Like, for me, I've pretty much closed off to the idea that I will go to another WWE show live unless things change. If a WrestleMania was announced in London tomorrow, I probably wouldn't be able to afford to go. That's the reality. It's more than I can afford with two young kids. As a responsible adult, there's only so much I can spend on attending wrestling. I remember when I was watching, I think it was the first show in Paris, the first show in France they did, I think, when Triple H got in the ring and applauded that they'd had like the highest gate ever, and the crowd all clapped and cheered, and like, it was an amazing achievement. I remember watching that thinking, like, what the heck am I watching? Like, seriously, is a crowd just cheering that this giant company has made loads of money at their expense? Like, it's the kind of thing that you expect to see, like, inside in a boardroom. Like, you expect to see, like, all the executives high-fiving and back-patting one another for the fact they've made record profits. But actually, WWE was encouraging its own fans to celebrate the fact that they'd just spent out so much money on merchandise and to physically get into the event. And that's something we've seen time and time and time again. WWE like kind of inviting us to celebrate their own financial success, when ironically it's at our expense. It's a crazy dynamic we're in, and obviously here in the UK, we're not affected by the pay-per-views now switching to ESPN like many of my American audience are. So we can still access the pay-per-views or the PLEs via Netflix. But for a lot of American fans now, they've got to pay even more to access the content. And I don't know, it's just a question, I guess, when is enough enough? When is the price so high that the audience starts responding by not attending? Because I think that's the question here. TKO can inflate its prices as much as it wants. It can charge $100,000 for a WrestleMania ticket, $200,000. If someone pays for it, it is worth it. If someone is willing to spend that money, then that is the value. And then it's very, very hard to work your way down from there. The only way that things are going to change in WWE, in UFC, in live events generally, is if people stop buying the tickets. It's as simple as that. Until supply and demand are not meeting hand in hand, this is just going to continue. So I guess my question really, and the thing that I really want to open up to discussion now, is when is enough enough, and how much is too much? Like, will you continue to pay to attend WWE live events, even if that means that you're spending what you would have spent on a family vacation so that you can attend a wrestling show in your area? How much is it worth to you to have that live wrestling experience? And is TKO in the right by doing this? They are, at the end of the day, they're a business. They've acquired WWE. They are there to maximise their revenue. They've done that very, very well and successfully with UFC. Is the company right to be doing exactly what they're doing? Who are we to say, as the fans, as the customers, that their pricing model isn't right? Is it right that we're feeling so emotionally invested about this? For me, wrestling has always relied on that emotional investment. It's been a two-way discourse between company and fans, between talent and fan. And we are that crucial third character in wrestling storytelling. Without the fans, you don't have a story. We saw it all too well through let's just say the surreal years, the Thunderdome period of wrestling, if you will. We saw what happens when you take away the fans. So I just want to throw that question out there, like, how much is too much for wrestling fans? Is enough enough? Have the prices got out of hand? And will you be willing to stick with WWE live events, even if you're paying even more than you are right now? So I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have stuck with me throughout this video, then credit to you, because I know it's been rambly. As I say, do look at James Ferreira's excellent breakdown that he did on WrestleMania 42 ticket prices, because that was superb and it's well worth a watch. I'd love to, please leave a comment. As I say, this is a place for positivity. I'm asking genuinely questions here, questions that are on my mind, on my heart. I'd love to hear what you think. Will you continue to head to WWE live events? Are you willing to pay the prices that are being talked about? How do you feel about this? What's next for WWE and what's next for wrestling? So please leave a comment if you can. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show. I massively appreciate that. Watch some of the old content and check out some of our interviews. Over 60 exclusive interviews now with wrestlers talking about their real lives and sharing real stories. So grateful for your time. Thanks for being with me. And let's see what happens next. I've been Ben Veal. This is Wrestling Life. See you soon. Be good to each other. Bye.